At some point, we had like a moment when we realized like, hey, that moment we have been talking about for a long time, where we need to take the agent off the leash because the leash is now more trouble than it's worth. As a reminder, the leash is this thing that keeps the agent on rails, that it basically kneecaps the agent. It removes the flexibility, it removes the intelligence of the agent, but it buys you a lot of reliability. I think little by little, as the agent and the model become smarter and smarter, not only do you not need the leash anymore because the model is just reliable enough as it is, but in fact, the leash starts to become harmful because it's just like, take me off the leash. I know what to do. I can do so much more for you.
Before we get into the podcast, I want to announce that we will be running monetization workshops. So if you are an AI agent builder, if you are a SaaS CEO or founder, if you are anywhere near trying to make money by building agents, this event is for you. We run them at the end of February, and they were hugely successful, oversubscribed. We're going to run them again at the end of March. So beginning on March 24th, we're going to be running one a day for 2 or 3 days. Go to paid.ai/event to subscribe. These are monetization events with some of the best monetization minds in the planet. These are people from Simon Kucher. These are people that have done monetization for some of the largest and most successful companies in the planet. They're all going to be there. They're going to explain in their models. They're going to help you get back to growth. This is paid.ai/events, and this will be in-person events in San Francisco coming up at the end of March 24th onwards. Look forward to seeing you there. Let's go get paid. So today on the Get Paid podcast, we have Flo, the inventor of Lindy. Flo is an incredible story of persistence and tenacity and entrepreneurship. He raised an amount of money to build a different product, didn't really quite find its footing, iterated to a number of different ideas, and those ideas spiraled that up into what is now Lindy. Lindy is one of the finest and most successful executive assistants in the market. Completely AI, it will completely blow your mind. We talk about entrepreneurship, we talk about the learnings of going through the valley of despair and what happens when things get hard, and how do you get through it whole as a person, as a team, and how do you come out of the other end with the learnings and build a successful company that is growing the way Lindy is. There's going to be a ton of learnings about entrepreneurship, a ton of learnings about building in this new age, and a ton of learnings on how to get paid in this new environment of AI that drives itself and it makes you feel like you're empowered. With that, let's go get paid. Flo, so glad to have you in the podcast. I've been following you on Twitter for a little bit. I'm a lurker, so I don't follow, I lurk. And I really love your hot takes. I love what you're building with Lindy. Is such a product of the moment. I love your story actually when you and I met and you told me about how you meandered your way into success. So there's so much to talk about. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's start with who is Flo? How do you end up in San Francisco? Let's go from your first memories all the way to today.
I was born on a fine January afternoon. Who is Flo? Born and raised in France, as you can probably hear. Moved to SF 14 years ago. I'm the founder of a startup called Lindy. We're building an AI executive assistant for busy executives and professionals who spend their days in meetings and emails. My background is kind of all over the place. Lots of engineering. That's really what I studied and where I spent the bulk of my career. A little bit of design as well, and quite a bit of product work as well. I used to work at Uber for 5 years, and I started out there as an engineer, and very quickly I made the move over to product.
One of your hot takes is that you don't believe in formal education.
That is such a such a common thing in Silicon Valley. Well, I guess you could say I am particularly well informed then to know how little.
With the benefit of knowledge.
I can tell you, if you look at the delta in how much I had learned between the moment I entered college and the moment I left college 5 years later, 5 years is how long it takes in France to get a master's degree. I think in the US it's 6 years. If you look at that delta, I would say less than 5% of the delta was due to the education I received in college. I would say 90, because I'm not going to say I learned nothing. I did learn during these 5 years, because hopefully if you, during every 5 years window, you're going to learn a lot. But I can't attribute a lot more than 5% of that to college. I attribute a lot of that to my project. I started the company when I was in college and started growing. Like, I learned a lot through that, And I can tell you, and I'm sure this resonates as well on your side, as someone who hires a lot and reviews resumes and interviews a lot. If I have a choice between someone who went to college for 5 years and has, let's just call it 1 year of experience, professional experience out of college, versus someone who did not go to college but has 3 years of experience. So the first person spent 6 years, the second person spent 3 years. The second person to me is worth a hell of a lot more, like a lot more than the first person. They are more ready. They're less junior. They've spent 3 years in at work. They could start to be ready almost to be a manager, right? Like 3, 4, 5 years of experience. That's when you can really make the leap over to management. So, yeah, I think in particular in computer science, I think the opportunity cost of college is not worth it.
I agree with you. I will make the same trade. Matter of fact, in our world, when we're small companies fighting against the large companies that can pay a lot more, we all play Moneyball. You know what I mean? We're looking for the edges, the misfits, the underpriced assets. And no college degree is actually one of the finest plays is still out there for the taking. That, is a high, no college degree, lots of good experience, lots of own projects is far better than the college experience. So on that, I agree with you. Let me bring another angle, and this is not a this is not a political podcast, but you have such a strong opinions that I want to dig in a little bit on some of this stuff. What is there any social value? Is there any exploration, any philosophy, anything non sort of quantifiable that you get out of those 5 years?
It depends what you mean by wasted. I don't mean that you get zero value out of these 5 years. And I'm very careful when I use the word opportunity cost. I do believe that it is low. You get less value than you would get if you did something else, this argument is a very common one. Like, yes, but you get all of those social benefits. You get the network, which I actually think is a very compelling argument. They sound kind of like cope to me, don't they? Right? It's kind of like you have to ask yourself about the past dependency. Imagine if college did not exist. Imagine if everyone just went straight to the workplace and did that. Would you really then be proposing, wouldn't it be neat if people instead did 5 years of not working, certainly not professionally working, paying $50,000 a year in the US? That's another issue. And there would be tremendous social value. It's hard to really pinpoint, but there would be tremendous social value in doing that. I'm I don't know. It sounds kind of like cope to me. I think the experience you get when you're on the job. And by the way, if you're talking about opportunity cost, there's a measurable opportunity cost of if you get a job and you earn 6 figures versus if you don't get a job and you spend 5 figures, that's a huge difference. So yeah, I think the burden of proof is really, really high on the side of folks who are advocating for more college education.
Yeah, no, I personally, I tend to agree with you, which is hard, right? Because I consider myself overeducated. I feel like I wasted it out of my 7 years of education. At least 2, I can tell you for a fact that they were not well spent. But it's neither here nor there. The Lindy experience. Walk me through the meandering path that brought you to this aha moment. That was super fascinating. As someone who went through a pivot myself, game recognizes game on this one. So tell us more about what you did.
Oh boy, it's a long story, but I think in a way we sort of it's almost been like a loop or like a spiral. Right, well, it's like a loop. It's just you're back to square one. A spiral is on some dimension you're back to square one, but on some other dimension you're making a lot of progress. But we started working on AI agents before ChatGPT. It was mid 2022. Certainly before anyone was really thinking about AI agents. LangChain did not exist, and it was very, very, very early. It was before GPT-4. We had 4,000 tokens complex windows and all of that stuff. And it's a long story, but we were working on a meeting recorder, And at some point, we were like, oh my God, like we got very excited about the GPT-3 API. And we were like, what could we use this for? And we were like, what if our meeting recorder was updating the CRM after the meeting? And so at the time, we were thinking about it as like feature extraction. So we had like a hard-coded pipeline that would look at the meeting transcript. The hallucination rate was off the charts. It was so bad. But it would look at the meeting transcript and it would extract the things you would want to update your CRM with, such as like number of seats, like next steps, whatever, champion, whatever. And then you would update the CRM with that. And little by little, we came up with a more and more general incarnation of this feature, where it's like, oh, maybe we can update not just the opportunity on the CRM, but also the contact. Oh, maybe we can update any CRM, not just Salesforce, but HubSpot and Microsoft Dynamics. Oh, maybe it can do more than just update CRMs. Maybe it can do more and more. So we keep finding more and more general incarnations of this idea until it clicks end of 2022, and we realized, wait a minute, we can get the LLM to take any arbitrary action for us. And so that's when we realized, oh my God, these things are not just language models. They are like action models, right? They can actually do stuff for you. And so this vision came together of like...
No, wait. End of 22, 4.0 just rolls out.
No. End of 22 was not even GPT-4 was out. It was GPT 3.5. It was when ChatGPT came out. It was end of 22.
Got it. So it's still rough. Like action models, you have to squint. Like it's not that straightforward.
Yeah, you have to squint hard, for sure. It was not rough. You have to squint really hard. I mean, look, at the time, everybody was talking about, if you remember, actually, like generative AI, we don't really hear that word anymore, do we? We talk about agents now. At the time, people thought that those models, what they were good for was like generating language. Like Copy.ai, Jasper. There were like a lot of those. It was like generating language.
Writer, Jasper, and Copy, I think, were the three wrappers.
What happened to Writer? I think, I think Writer is doing well because they were really the ones that like nailed enterprise and then like negotiated the pivot to agents. But anyway, I was like, look, the GDP is not made of copywriters and illustrators. It's made of work. It's made of actions, And so we came up with this idea of like an AI executive assistant. And we released the video. We had a prototype and we released the video in 2023 that you can still find today on YouTube of like this AI executive assistant that helps you with your email, with your meetings. It's very proactive and so forth. And, it's really interesting because the reason why we released the video and the waitlist is because we had those prototypes internally. And we were like, it's kind of working. Surely it can't be more than a couple more months of work to make it work well enough that we're actually comfortable releasing it in general availability. So we released the video, and then it was a lot more than a few months. Like the product did not work. It was impossible to make this thing work. And we were in a pre-paradigmatic era. Like it was not even clear yet how to do function calling. Like action calling did not exist for LLMs. It did not exist. Like we had them write code and like call APIs with code. It was an absolute mess. And so we pivoted to, instead of building an opinionated product, we're going to build a platform. And I think this distinction here is really key. And I think it's going to be important about you and paid and like monetization, because I think product and platforms are monetized very, very differently. But basically, we were like, okay, we're not going to build like an agent. We're going to build an agent builder. We're going to build a platform that you use to build your own AI agents. And the reason why it was better to do it this way is because we gave you a sort of canvas, like a Zapier-like canvas that was like boxes and arrows. And we called it keeping the agent on a leash. So it's basically you as a human, you lay out the steps that the agent is going to follow. And when you do that, in a way, you make the job of the agent easier because it just has to like fill in the blanks. Okay, now you're going to send this email. All I'm asking you is fill out the body. Oh, okay. Right. And we always knew that the leash that we put the agent on was a temporary solution.
Yeah.
It gives you reliability, but it takes away flexibility. The agent is on rails.
Yeah.
So we did that, and we grew quite well. Like we grew really, really fast last year.
What was the magic moment on that? Was it like the moment you wrote the email, or was it the moment you told it to do something and actually got it done? Like what was the aha moment that turned that into a sale?
For
when
the
you were
platform or the
demoing this?
product? For the
Yeah,
AI
for the
system? Yeah.
for the platform.
I think that the magic moment here was we were in touch with a prominent VC firm, and they were like, I want my agent to do this and this and this and that and that and that. And we were like, there is no chance that the AI assistant can do this for you with just prompting. It's not going to work. And so we were like, let's put it on Rails. So we built that Rails product. And then we were able to almost immediately, it took us a couple of weeks, and then like we were able to check all of those boxes that this VC firm wanted to do, and we automated so many things inside the firm, it was insane. So that's when it really clicked for us. We're like, oh my God, this thing all of a sudden is so much more reliable, and it can do so much more than it could before in a much more controllable fashion.
So that clicked. You got at least a funding round or at least a customer out of that, and I'm sure that magic is repeatable. So you went and took the show on the road.
Yes.
Got some traction.
There was one moment in particular where like a YouTube influencer, it was like just a couple of weeks after we had announced the product, and the YouTube influencer came out and started to like sing our praises, Matt Vid Pro. And from there, it's just like everything inflected. It was like a huge moment. I was like, oh, we started growing really fast at the time.
It's kind of funny because most people pay for that kind of traction, and you just got it for free.
We just got it for free. We did. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what we did. And then last year, like better and better models kept coming out. And we had those prototypes internally of like, we call them like end-to-end agents. You know, and like an end-to-end agent is different from like an agent on Rails where it's just like a single agent loop. It's a for loop. You know, it just keeps looping and doing stuff until it thinks it's done. And end-to-end agents were never the most reliable part of the product, but we could gradually see them get more and more reliable. With Cloud, I would say like Cloud 3.5 was like a pretty big moment for us. Like that's when like end-to-end agents really started working. So we kept prototyping these end-to-end agents internally. And because we had this very flexible platform, I built my dream AI assistant, which is why I started the company initially. And I could see that thing every time a new model came out, I just swapped like my AI assistant for the new model. And I could see that thing get like more and more magical until it became like, holy cow. And I kept the team posted about those experiments. Like I had like a Slack channel where I just post all of those experiments that I was making. And then at some point we had like a moment when we realized like, hey, is that moment we have been talking about for a long time where we need to take the agent off the leash because the leash is now more trouble than it's worth. As a reminder, the leash is this thing that keeps the agent on Rails, that it basically kneecaps the agent. It removes the flexibility, it removes the intelligence of the agent, but it buys you a lot of reliability. I think little by little, as the agent and the model become smarter and smarter, not only do you not need the leash anymore because the model is just reliable enough as it is, but in fact, the leash starts to become harmful. Because it's just like, take me off the leash. I know what to do. I can do so much more for you.
Yeah.
And so we that's when we started like going back to our roots, if you will, and just working again on that AI assistant vision.
Tell me about the hard choices as a founder when you are iterating on product in a circular way. You live in possibly the most competitive labor market on the planet, where retaining talent is a challenge even for the best of them. How do you keep a team engaged on a vision that is circulating upwards or circulating nonetheless? Like it's not like a rocket, like it's straight up, but you sort of like go through your meandering path up.
Look, first of all, I'm not going to pretend what's the saying? Like I batted a 10 or something on this. We lost talent.
Batting 1,000.
Yeah, batting 1,000. That's right. I batting a 10 is like a low bar. I did not bat a 10 on this. No, but like, look, we did lose talent. There's no way around it. I think it's and I'm actually curious to hear your thoughts about this, Manny, because like you've got more experience than I do on this, which is like one of the things I find interesting in the experience of an early stage founder who's looking for product market fit. And I think in AI, you're always looking for product market fit because it's continuously moving. And so you find it to grow really fast, and then the ground is moving from underneath you because the models are changing so fast. You're always on that trigger. And one thing I have found interesting is that people crave stability, and they crave a stability that you cannot give them. In a way, they're kind of like shooting the messenger. I'm like, hey, I'm just relaying the signal of the market here, right? And so it is maybe unstable. It's a startup. So I know it sounds like a cop-out, but it's like, look, to some extent, there's nothing you can do about the instability of a startup. And it's not for everyone. And there's a lot of people who just get demoralized and leave.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And every founder that you'll meet out there has had that experience. Like if you, like I was listening to a podcast by Parker, the CEO of Rippling, and for the first 2 years of Rippling, he's like, the biggest problem was to keep people in the company because, as we're building this thing, we're building a platform. There's a lot to build. Like trashing is low. Like in a hyper competitive market, HRMSs are fucking like a dime a dozen. The whole thing is super hard. And I'm sure that every other founder, especially if you are committed to the Bay Area, where it's hyper competitive, you either hit it on the first couple of tries, or you just lose your talent. I don't think there is a great answer for it, other than
Keep grinding.
Use grinding, exactly, and that if your vision is steady. Like this is the thing that I find super interesting about you. It's like you had your vision, you went a couple of hard rights and hard lefts. So let's talk about your Zapier product, and then coming back into the agent world. Like so you tried to find product market fit. You actually found some amount of product market fit. You actually had revenue.
Oh, we had significant revenue.
And that is something that most VCs would tell you, okay, lock and load. Let's hire a go-to-market leader and let's go. And that leads to mediocre outcomes usually. And you're one of the few that I found that looked at that and was like, yeah, this revenue doesn't feel right. This is not a scalable company. So let's dig into that one for a minute, if you would.
I think 2025 was a very unique time because we had so much pipeline. It was crazy. Like the sales team was just cranking. And I was jumping on those sales calls, and they were very weird because we jumped on those calls and it's like, oh, like you guys are Lindy, you build agents, huh? Like, yeah, tell us about your company, tell us about the problem you're trying to solve. And people were literally, and they had booked the demo. This was not outbound. Those were hand raisers that had booked the demo. And literally a lot of them were like, I don't know, like I just want to check you guys out, see what this whole agent thing's about, And so I think there has been a lot of agent curious buyer on the market. And I think this has not been like a normal market. I think 2025 was not a normal market. And I think there's been a little bit of a return to shelfware and vaporware. I talked to a lot of buyers who say we've bought this and that software for 5 figures, 6 figures, and no one's using it. Not Lindy, but I've heard a lot about that. But not us. And I think 20 and the board told us the same thing. They're we're seeing that in a lot of places in our portfolios right now. Just to bounce back really quickly about what we were saying previously about that's just part of the startup journey. I heard Dylan Field from Figma say this. Someone was asking him at some event we were at. Someone was asking him what it is that surprised you most about building Figma, and he said how few people could go all the way. And the guy was like, what do you mean? And he said well, the people who had the most information about the company were the employees, right? You work on this 60 hours a week, you think about it under the shower. And they, who had the most information, got demoralized and left. It was so hard for him to manage the morale of the team and retain his team for the first 5 years, because it took them 5 years to make their first dollar, right? So again, if Dylan from Figma, which ended up being the generational company of that decade, right? Struggled with it. I think it tells you something about what the median company is like.
So what advice? So real quick, I'm going out of order right now, but out of that period, what do you learn about yourself, and what do you learn about humanity that you apply going forward?
Wow,
because it's the first time you go through this level of difficulty. You got thrown into level 10.
Oh, no. I've gone through the ringer. Lindy itself, for the pivot from a virtual office thing, look, if you're going through hell, keep going. I think it's one thing. You just learn as a founder, and you know what it is. You just learn to take the pain. And I think on some level, at some point, it stops. It always hurts, but it stops hurting you so bad. And you just, Parker Conrad from Rippling told me, because this is a question I ask founders as well. I think that's Ben Horowitz says the hardest part of the job of a founder is to manage your own psychology. And so I'm always curious when I talk to founders, like in particular founders who are a couple of steps ahead of me. I ask them, how do you do that? And Parker, of all people, is fuck. This guy's really gone through it. Like he's really gone through it.
Oh my God, hats off to him. Like he is one of my heroes, 100%.
Like the comeback story of the century. And so I asked him, I was like, how do you do it? And he said, at some point you learn that like the highs aren't real and the lows aren't real either. It's all just a game. And he also says like the Zenefits thing gave him much thicker skin. He was like, however bad it is now, it's never nearly as bad as what it was back then, because that was apocalyptic. Fuck, I don't know if I'm supposed to relay that story, but I'm sure he doesn't mind. So yeah, you just keep going.
Any personal unlocks from this? Like who's the new Flo versus the old Flo?
I think, frankly, my biggest learning from that experience has been as a product person, and it's been really that distinction between the product and the platform.
Mm.
And I think I learned that it's very dangerous to try to dance in the middle between a product and a platform. I think you have to pick a lane, like very clearly. I think if you're building a platform, you're building for a developer. In spirit, at least a developer, right? It could be someone in IT, I don't know, but in spirit, it is not an end user. It is someone who's going to build on top of your platform to bridge the gap and build a product for the user. And so I think you have to be so very, very, very clear in your mind about who you're building for. And I think that, when we built that agent builder, we were articulating who we were as like, we are the world's easiest way to build AI agents. Well, and we were the easiest to use platform to build AI agents. And I think I have come over time to view this mission statement the same way I would today if someone came to me and was like, I'm giving you the world's easiest way to make your own cheeseburgers at home. And I'm like, if you're selling to that guy who cares about that value prop, really what you want to sell him is McDonald's. I'm not going to want to make my own cheeseburgers at home, And if you want to sell to a guy who makes cheeseburgers, then you're selling to like a cook, you're selling to a chef. And like those are like, don't be in the middle.
Yeah.
And so we've decided to stop being in the middle. And so we had to pick a lane. Like either you go hard left towards like developers, and I think like OpenClaws done that and like had tremendous success, or you go hard right and then you build an opinionated magical product for an end user who is busy. He's got 30 seconds to give you, and that's it. And we decided to do that because that was our original vision.
That's got to be framed. Like that's exactly right. Like living in the middle is death. So you got to pick a lane and go hard in that lane and be hard in that lane. I completely agree with you. I just onboarded myself to Lindy a few hours ago, and I used it heavily. And the experience was less than 2 minutes end to end. And I was getting value from it because he snapped my calendar and he was telling me about what am I about to get ready for? Because we're all busy. And that is the magical piece of Lindy, is that it does act like a proper executive assistant. And an executive assistant tells you what you need to do right when you look at your phone, right? You're running from meeting to meeting, you're jumping on a cab, you're running to the airport, and it's telling you what you need to worry about and what is ahead of you so you can actually, show up strong. And it's interesting. What was the impetus? Like, what was your insight that led you to that discovery? Like, do you have a crack executive assistant that was so based that just like,
yes,
it was like, I need to get that woman into my phone. It's like, what was the and the phone experience, and the fact that it's a fun experience first. That was the other thing.
The phone thing, even I did not foresee would be that big of a deal, frankly. Like we saw
as a text, like that's how we operate, and you knew that. So like, what was the whole set of events that led you to that discovery?
Yeah. So there's a lot here going on, but I would say the meta thing here is like I've been building for myself, right? I am the ICP on that one. I receive so many emails. I sometimes joke that like CEO stands for like Chief Email Officer. I spend my lives in meetings, and it's overwhelming. And I've been back to back calls, and I don't have time between my calls to check my email, to check my Slack. All I check is this. I check my phone. And I very quickly, if there's something urgent, people know to text me. And so I wanted an iMessage thing. And it is true that once we built the iMessage feature internally, we realized it was not a feature. It's the product. It's the product. It's just like the whole thing is iMessage. In a way that frankly was problematic because we had built a lot of features in the web experience that are like, fuck, we need to rethink them in like an iMessage first format now. But yeah, I mean, all of those touches of magic and delight, these are the workflows that I had been iterating on over 10 years with my executive assistants. And I am a bit ashamed, this is almost a bad thing, but I do change executive assistants like on average every year or something. And so I think at this point, like I've triangulated quite a bit, like what I like with some executive assistants, like they do things differently and you keep iterating on your format and all of that stuff. So, that's been the journey here. And I think the key word here, there's two key words here that inform how we've built this executive assistant experience. And it's proactive and it's opinionated. Again, I think if you're building a product, as opposed to building a platform, even just asking the user what do you want is too much. The user is so busy, he's giving you so little time that just that question is too much. You've got to be like out of the box, batteries included. I know what you want. I'm going to just sign up, connect your Google, boom. I'm going to prepare you for your meetings. I'm going to take notes during your meetings. I'm going to prepare you for your days. If you want more on top of that, that's fine. You're going to get there little by little. But we're going to start with stuff that gives you value immediately.
That's incredible. So let's take a step back. What's Lindy? We never got into that. And why is that an opinionated executive assistant? Like what does it replace? What's a superpower? And what's everyone's world after Lindy comes into it?
Lindy is an AI executive assistant that helps you with your work. So it's proactive. It's not the same as like a Claude or like a ChatGPT where like you have to prompt those guys to get help. Like Lindy continuously works in the background and it looks at your emails and it looks at your calendar. It's very secure, by the way, when it looks at these things. We're like SOC 2 compliant, we're HIPAA compliant, we're used by like clinics across the US for like sensitive health information. But it just keeps looking at your life and learning about you, and it proactively offers ways that it can help you. So for example, I'm in a meeting, this happened just this morning where like I was meeting with someone, a very senior engineer that I've been working on for a long time to hire. And during the interview, he's like, "Oh, you know who else you should talk to is this guy?" And he gives me a name. It's like, this guy is also really good, you know? And I'm like, "Oh, that's great." Lindy sends me a text after the meeting. She's like, "Hey, this guy, I found his LinkedIn. I've drafted the outreach email. Do you want me to send it?" And she was able to do that because she found the LinkedIn because she just found the LinkedIn, and she drafted the outreach email because she knows about me and about my work. So the outreach email was actually really good. I did not have to change much before sending it. So the life before and after Lindy, I would say, sure, it buys you time. You know, I think like it buys me probably 2 hours a day or something. You know, it's like I spend a lot less time in my inbox. I spend a lot less time preparing myself for meetings. But I would say most importantly, what it buys me is peace of mind. Like I feel a lot less overwhelmed and I feel a lot less mental load when I do stuff. I'll give you another example of something that happened a couple of weeks ago where I was in a meeting and Lindy sends me a text message and I look at it during the meeting. It's like, "Hey, like there's like an incident happening right now. You received this email from this user. It's like there's like something bad is going on." And I'm like, "Oh, fuck." And I'm like, ping the team about this, pings the on-call about this. That's all I had to do. And look, the time saving here is not major, right? This would probably have taken me 2 minutes on my computer. But if you measure in clicks, it's so much easier to just be like ping the on-call than it is to like, okay, I'm gonna open my email client, I'm gonna find the email, I'm gonna copy paste it, I'm gonna take a screenshot, I'm gonna file a ticket, I'm gonna go to Slack, I'm gonna find the on-call. It's just a lot less mental load. It's just so much easier. So I think that's what it buys you.
That is so good because it's actually the finest description of an incredible executive assistant is how do you feel? You know, I mean, you can't. You know, it's really hard to put in task. It's really hard to put in a job description. Most people that I know, most CEOs that I know have a hard time with their executive assistants because they don't quite dial it, until they find the great one. And it seems like you just built it. Who are your main users? Like we talked about this. Like, who are you selling to? Who's your persona?
Founders, business owners, those are like anyone who spends their lives in meetings and emails and feels overwhelmed and very busy. That's the ICP.
Okay, that's pretty broad. Who are you competing with in that ICP, and how do you elbow your way into a pole position to be the category leader here?
Frankly, we're competing against humans. Like I talk to customers all day, and what they say is like, I'm like, what do you do right now, or what are you about to do? And very often, actually, the trigger is my executive assistant. I fired them, or they quit on me. Or I'm about to hire one. We compete against humans, and what I tell folks is like, look, in some ways, actually, it's better than a human. In many ways, it's not as good. Obviously, we don't have AGI yet. Like a human is going to be able to do more for you than an AI. Yeah, for now, give it a year. But I would say in many ways it's superior because it's available 24/7. It responds in 20 seconds. Like that's huge. And I did not appreciate that actually, but like you take the gloves off when you talk to an AI, and it's just you can allow yourself to be more terse and more direct. Like when I see how I talk to my Lindy, I'm not a dick or anything, but like I'm very direct. I'm like, do this, right? I wouldn't ask my EA like do this at like 11 p.m. right? And also because I know that it's an AI, like I feel less shy about asking small stuff. I can ask anything I want.
So what non-utilitarian behavior you wish it had that it doesn't have right now?
I think like very complex tasks. So I still have an EA. Like I've had an EA for 10 years, and I would say 90% of what she did for me a year ago is not done by Lindy. Like the bread and butter, like inbox triaging, meeting recording, and note taking, that's all done by Lindy now. But for example, like, well, she's doing a lot of HR stuff. Like she's doing a lot of payroll stuff. She's doing like a lot of like office management stuff, like physical stuff that cannot be done by an AI. Just yesterday, we had to like renew our cybersecurity insurance, and like she had to like find the financial model to see like what's our exposure, and she had to like jump on a bunch of calls with a bunch of different insurance brokers, and that's just not something that an AI will be able to do yet.
What about remember people's birthdays, sending flowers?
That Lindy does do. We had a lot of people for Valentine's Day who actually used Lindy to order flowers for there.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's a tweet right there. All right. So Lindy's your executive assistant. It gives you peace of mind, which is priceless at this point. It saves you 10 hours a day. That's quite big, but sorry, 10% of your time. 10% of your time you get back. So that's 2 hours a day. How do you make money on this? How do you get paid? How does everyone in your company get paid?
We charge users. So we charge, we have like a base plan that's $49 a month. That's why I tell people it's like 80% of the value of an EA for like 5% of the price or something. Like an EA is going to cost you $100,000 a year or something. And a VA, even if you get someone in the Philippines, it's going to cost you $3,000 or $4,000 a month. So we charge $49 a month. And then, there's like a pro plan and a max plan that are like at $99 and $200 a month.
And what's the difference in the plans? Like what like if you max it to 11, what are you getting?
You get on the pro plan, you get computer use. So that's how like Lindy can start like going online and checking all those statuses and ordering flowers and like do much more stuff, because that's how you get computer use. And then like the pro and the max plans, they buy you more usage limits as well, because it's under the hood, it is still credits based and tokens based. These are fundamentally just expensive to provide because it is an LLM under the hood. In particular, because we are a proactive product that just keeps waking up and running in the background, even when you don't ask anything, just continuously. That's extremely expensive to run. And I would say like about half of what we do as a company is always just optimizing that loop.
So what does that do to your margins? Like, how do you come up with the $49.99? Like, what's the winning equation here for an executive assistant?
Yeah, I think this is again where like the difference between the product and the platform are important, because if you sell to a user, if you're a product and you sell to a user for like a given job to be done, the willingness to pay just exists outside of your company. It's just a thing, and it's fixed, and it's you're like a price taker here. And for us, like we did a bunch of research, and it's basically 49. If anything, 49 is kind of high. If you think of like your personal subscriptions, like Superhuman at the time got a lot of flack for being priced at 29. So it's just kind of like it's just a natural price point for this kind
No,
of
but it
product.
was interesting because Superhuman pegged it against the number of hours it was going to save you. Like, I
Yeah.
think, I forget the number of hours. Was it like 3 or 4 hours or 5 hours or whatever? And they were like, were you willing to pay, $29.99 for like this many hours back? And everybody was like, hell yeah, let's do it.
Right.
So like, and in your world, and with all this inflation, like $59.99 just feels like the price adjusted for inflation Superhuman.
That is correct. Yeah. No, 100% agreed.
What about the intangible value? Like, how do you capture that? Like, how do you capture the peace of mind? Like, or is that just, cream on top?
I think it's very hard. I actually think this is what people end up paying for. If you look at Superhuman, are you a Superhuman customer?
Mm-hmm.
Same here. It's like, that's what I pay for. It's not even necessarily the time saved. I don't think it saves me like half an hour per day or anything like that. It's just like they've gamified the email experience and they've turned the chore into something delightful. And that's what I buy for Superhuman. And I feel like everyone who buys Superhuman at first convinces themselves like it's a sound investment because of the time saving. But then it's like, come for the time saving, stay for the delight sort of thing. So I think in our case, it's the same. I actually think the most important thing is the peace of mind you buy yourself.
I mean, the difference between you and Superhuman is that Superhuman, you have to make the investment to get into it. And frankly, I did it because my co-founder Manoj is a super user of Superhuman. And frankly, I feel inadequate. I'm like, holy fuck! Like, I feel like I'm a troglodyte if I'm not at the same like shortcut level as he is, right? Whereas Lindy provided a moment of delight within like a minute and a half of being set up. So I mean, he started telling me what I should be worried about in a minute, and asking me like, do you want this?
I think the other very important difference here, and I think it's an interesting case study of like a broader phenomenon that's happening right now in SaaS and with AI and agents, which is Superhuman. And by the way, this is not a diss at them. I fucking love that product, right? But Superhuman is an enabler of work, and totally. And Lindy is a doer of work. And I think this is what people are missing right now when they're talking about the SaaS apocalypse. I think like this is the greatest TAM expansion in the history of software. Because like, look, software has been able to go so far, right? You've got huge companies like Salesforce and all of that stuff, like being just enablers and supporters of work, supporting systems to work. But for the first time, software with agents is actually becoming a doer of work. I think Intercom is the other really good case study here. They went from like Intercom just like a system to like manage your tickets to a system that actually handles your tickets. And there's no doubt that it's an infinitely bigger market.
Interesting. All right, let's move on to the next topic real quick. So like let's talk about hot takes. So SaaS apocalypse. Is that a market expansion or just a burnout of the past? And we're moving on to the new era of agents and everything is agentized.
To some extent, you could say it's just rationalization because I do think the multiples had been inflated for a long time. So I think there's some of that. Now, I think there's like the voting machine, weighing machine thing going on. And I think the weighing machine over the long term says that this is, if you look at AI, it's obvious to any practitioner that software is becoming more valuable than it ever has been.
So where does it land? Like, are these prices the right prices, or are they the wrong prices, and we'll see them bounce back?
I think it depends on the company and whether the company can actually negotiate this pivot. I would say, I mean, Intercom just raised a round. I would expect that round to.
Dude, he was dead. He was dead.
Yeah,
$200 million of debt. That's I get uncomfortable. The whole thing.
Oh, I did not realize that. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so with that new information, what's your take?
I'll confess, I don't 100% understand. Like you probably do that much better than I do. Like, what is it that drives the founder to raise debt instead of equity? In a way, doesn't that signal bullishness about the future cash flow of the business?
It could be. I mean, the coupon on that thing is probably like, let's just put a number on it. Let's put 6%. So 6% of $200 million is $12 million. Annually, you have to pay somebody to keep that amount, to just, and you have to pay that down over time. So it is bullishness on your future growth, right? Because what you're doing is arbitraging your growth minus the amount of debt, is better off than diluting yourself by raising, equity. So fair enough. Or it could mean you couldn't raise from the equity capital markets. I don't know. I just work here. What's your take?
Given the growth that he's been having on Finn, I think he could have raised a tremendous round. I think is a very attractive company. So I think it's bullish. I am bullish software and AI in general. I think there's going to be very many $100 billion plus companies minted. I just think it's complicated in the public markets right now, because like the public markets, they don't really like I think the public market investor invests in a very different fashion from like the venture capital investor. Like the venture capitalists love what I just said. It's like, hell, fuck yeah, right? Like I agree, I project myself 10 or 20 years in the future. There's going to be a lot of losers. There's going to be a couple of winners that are going to return the portfolio. Like I'm at the phone, I'm going to invest in that category. The public market does not think like that. The public market thinks in terms of like PagerDuty. It's like, what am I going to do with PagerDuty? That's probably a loser, right? And so I'm very bullish. Oh, sorry, nothing against PagerDuty, but like
I love those people. We love everybody. It's like it's
Exactly.
all good. It's all good.
So anyway, I'm very bullish on the category. I think it's just hard to tell right now who's going to be the winner and who's going to be the loser. And I think over the long term, like the TAM of software and agents is going to be monstrously huge.
I love your take when on the whole like Claude code review product. But if you have to worry about how much you're paying, you got bigger problems.
Yeah, $15 to $25 per PR, like that's nothing. Like that's less than you pay if a human is reviewing it. That is a lot less than the cost of a bug if there's a bug in there. Like it's like, come on, yeah.
So like, why were people losing their mind on this thing? Like I agree with you. Well, why do you think like taking the other side of it?
I just think the range of wealth and the range of willingness to pay in AI and in software in general is huge, right? Because like you've got people in India and the Philippines who are writing software, and for them like $5 a month is a lot of money. And then you've got people like you and I, like VC backed, and they're thinking in millions and billions of dollars. And for them, it's like $20, $25 per PR. It's like, oh my God, it's like the best deal ever.
What a great deal.
There's just this like bifurcation in the market. And it's just like the indie hacker guy who's watching every dollar is not who Anthropic is talking to with this release.
100%. So when as a builder of companies, like, I'm sure you advise, founders earlier in their career, like, well, what would you tell them about what to build? Like, what is not in the path of some of the LLMs that may, prove you useless in a couple of years? Like, how do you build it? Is it vertical? Is it like focus on a persona very clearly and target that persona? Build a platform. A lot of VCs ask you to go build from the platform play. Like, what's your advice?
The consensus stake here, which in a way is almost definitionally bad, being a consensus stage, because even if it's correct, there's very little alpha there. But like the consensus stake is like build for agents. I think that's absolutely. I think agents are going to be a very important constituency. And actually, let me walk back a little bit to the idea that just because it's consensus makes it a bad take. I actually think it is so very early, and I think a lot of tooling and a lot of software right now has to be rethought from the ground up with agents in mind, because they are a different constituency from humans and from developers. They're developer-like, but are not exactly developers. And so I think if you look at like a company like E2B, is doing really well right now. And they've built these VMs for agents. They built a computer for agents. Right now, Stripe is really trying to rebuild billing for agents. Like what does an agent first like billing experience look like? I'm looking for like a less consensus take, but my bio on my Twitter is like, I think it's a quote from Charlie Munger that's like, I think remembering the obvious is more important than trying to figure out the arcane.
Yeah.
Remember the obvious. It's just like there's going to be infinitely more agents in the future, and they're going to have infinitely more purchasing power and decision-making power and work power than humans. So focus on that. Focus on that constituency.
I think that I like that position, especially because, look, entrepreneurship is for optimists. If you're a pessimist, you sound really smart, but this is not your game. You know what I mean? I think one of the Collison brothers actually said that the optimists are smart and make money, and the pessimists just sound smart and don't make any money. So like the rest of us have to imagine a world in which the market and the TAM opens up. And even though, I sell for the SaaS apocalypse, right? Because I benefit when people change business models as they move to agentic. That's what Pay does. I do think in the end it's an expansion of the TAM. I think at the end is going to create a lot more opportunity. I deal with a ton of tiny agent companies that solve micro workflows that everybody has ignored that unlock millions of dollars for the customers. And they're everywhere. Like they're just like the moment it's like kind of taking like the red pill in the Matrix. Now you see them everywhere, and there are agents everywhere. And that fills my heart with joy, because there's a lot of, even there may not be a lot of billionaires, there's going to be a lot of 100,000aires and millionaires, and that's just good for the society. Yeah, I mean, the more we make, the better we are.
100%.
Flo, it's been such a pleasure to have you. I always enjoy these kind of conversations where you push me, you're inquisitive, you're a builder. This is the kind of people we need more of in this world. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
If you like the podcast, click like or subscribe. We are on the Apple podcast platform. We're on the Spotify platform. We're on the YouTube platform. We are on all major platforms. We're always fresh. Every week it comes out. Let's get paid.